So, folks, we gotta talk about Zohran Mamdani. That's right. The campaign for New York City's next mayor is continuing to heat up. And Mamdani's hitting the ground running with some pretty big guns here. Let's take a look at the latest campaign ad released by the campaign.
August in the Hamptons. Ocean breezes, oversubscribed Tracy Anderson classes, parking woes. And this year, with a New York City mayoral election looming in the fall, a freakout that the most sumptuous of summer staples has ensued. Even overpriced lobster salad can't seem to make people out here feel better, a veteran political fundraiser said. Everyone is talking about it all the time. What they are talking about, for the most part, is whether anyone, specifically former Governor Andrew M. Cuomo or Mayor Eric Adams, can beat the Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani. In June, he dared to say on Meet the Press,
I don't think that we should have billionaires.
The Hamptons is basically in group therapy about the mayoral race. In other words, the plutocrats are panicking. Another recent benefit for Mr. Cuomo took place at the Southampton estate of the conservative media executive Jimmy Finkelstein and his wife Pamela Gross, a former advisor to First Lady Melania Trump. Mamdani has a great smile and is wonderfully articulate. His social media is entertaining, and his promises sound fine until you look at the fine print, and they're not realistic.
It's just so good. That guy was from, I almost said Euphoria, Gilded Age. Yeah, think of the billionaires, the poor oppressed billionaires. Well, let's take a look here, because we have to reckon with the fact that there's been an accusation leveled at the Mamdani campaign, specifically by some people over on Twitter that I don't really trust, but we'll look at the interview nonetheless. Basically, there are some accusations that Zohran Mamdani is against Palestinian resistance and that he is now pro-Israel and is essentially capitulating to Zionism and is, in fact, selling out all Palestinians. Let's take a look, shall we? Here are the accusations that I am aware of from one of the larger accounts over on Twitter. I will point out that Socialist MMA is not somebody that I particularly trust. I find him to be kind of a crazy person. Just telling it like I see it. But let's continue here, okay? So, condemns Palestinian resistance, throws the Palestinian movement under the bus. Let's take a look here. Bernie Sanders told Zohran Mamdani to chill out on what he says about Israel, and clearly he listened. This guy is about to break AOC's sellout record. I thought the entire point of the left being excited over Zohran Mamdani was because we wanted someone who finally speaks on behalf of Palestinians and tell the truth about Israel. That is literally not happening. 100 Palestinians are being murdered per day by Israel. Meanwhile, Zohran Mamdani is running a campaign about protecting Jewish feelings. This guy can go fuck himself. Any true socialist leader would love to take these questions and educate people on why we need to support Palestinian rights, right to self-determination. Zohran didn't do this, of course, because he's not a leader. He's a careerist fuck who can't wait to sell you out. And again, that seems particularly wild, considering he's literally the socialist candidate for mayor of New York City. But we'll take a look. We'll take a look. Finally, Zohran Mamdani directly violated the Thawa bet, which I have no idea what that is. Like all social democrat scum regularly do. Reject colonialism in all its manifestations. Resistance of the Zionist movement is a duty. Fight for the liberation from the river to the sea with Al-Quds as the capital of Palestine. Preserve Palestinian self-determination and self-autonomy. Secure the right of return for all Palestinians. Again, don't know the origin of this. I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical that Zohran Mamdani has abandoned his principles. So let's take a look at this particular interview that is being used as the evidence that he is doing that.
Welcome back to Politics Nation. The New York City mayor's race is always high-stakes political battle capable of captivating the country's attention. But few contests in the city's history have been as dramatic as this year's. An upstart Democratic socialist with an unusual name came out of nowhere to win the Democratic primary. Now he's locked in a crowded general election field that includes a colorful cast of characters, including the current Mayor Eric Adams and former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Joining me now in studio is New York State Assemblyman from Queens, Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee and frontrunner for New York City Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight. You're in the middle of a competitive race, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's start tonight with pretending you've already won. It's January 26th. You've just been sworn in, and President Trump wakes up and starts posting. He calls you a communist. He says you're on the side of the criminals and open borders. So he's sending the National Guard because otherwise he claims there won't be a new New York City anymore. What specifically do you say in response to that? What's your first move?
The first thing is you have to prepare for the inevitability of that, Rev. We cannot pretend that Donald Trump will chain himself by what is legal. He's shown that he has no regard for the law. And we can see when he did this in California, what was the playbook to fight back against him? We had the governor work with the mayor, work with the attorney general. They filed a lawsuit. A federal judge recently found in their favor that the federal government had actually engaged illegally in that deployment. Now, think about, could you imagine Andrew Cuomo working with Tish James and Kathy Hochul together to fight back against Donald Trump? What we need is a approach to leadership that understands partnership at the core of it so that we push back not on what Donald Trump wants, but for what New Yorkers need. And that would be my driving imperative.
If Donald Trump was watching right now, what would you say to him in terms of partnership? Is there any way you could see him trying to cooperate with you or you with him?
Yes, this is Al Sharpton. In case you guys haven't paid attention to MSNBC lately, which fair if you haven't, that is the Reverend Al Sharpton.
If Donald Trump wants to actually deliver on the cheaper groceries he ran his presidential campaign on, then I'm willing to work with him. If it's anything to benefit New Yorkers, I'm willing to work with him. But if it comes at the expense of these New Yorkers, no. New Yorkers deserve someone who will actually fight for them.
Sorry, I assumed people would know that. That's my bad.
Not someone who is calling Donald Trump and asking, how can we stop the Democratic nominee, like my opponent Andrew Cuomo did.
Now, there are some voters who worry the scenario I'm laying out is more likely because of who you are, that Trump will target New York City's mayor for being young, Muslim, and on the left. They're arguing maybe it's safer to go with a more experienced politician like Governor Cuomo, who's already tangled with Trump before.
It's safer to go with Andrew Cuomo because he's already compromised. Is it insane that why regurgitate that talking point, Al Sharpton?
What do you say? What do you say to try to change their minds?
They should look at what we're getting right now. We have a mayor who's sought to collaborate with the Trump administration. And what we have gotten is that same administration reaching into our city's bank accounts and taking out $80 million. That same administration detaining and deporting a 6-year-old public school student from Jackson Heights. That same administration passing legislation that is going to cut SNAP from the hungry, throw millions of New Yorkers off of their health insurance, and all of it to provide the largest wealth transfer to the wealthiest Americans who have more money than they know what to do with. That's what collaboration has gotten us. What about we actually try fighting back?
Yesterday, you were at a town hall in Brooklyn alongside Bernie Sanders. You both appeared with AOC earlier in the day. Your campaign theme of affordability draws heavily on democratic socialist ideas as well, like building strong social safety nets and strong unions. I've seen you asked about areas where you and Trump might find common ground. But I want to ask a different question. Are there areas where you might differ from your colleagues on the left that New Yorkers should know about as they consider you for mayor?
I can tell you something I've learned over the course of this campaign, which is that often when we talk about affordability.
Ah, yes, that's why Kamala lost. She didn't have enough Epstein Island flight logs.
Damn it! But her emails!
We think of it purely through the lens of, let's say, tenants, but not as much of the question of homeowners. And what I have learned over the course of this campaign is the way in which affordability is a crisis hitting each and every New Yorker. So in the same breath that I speak about freezing the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants in New York City, I also speak about taking on a broken property tax system that we know is inequitable, that we know is unfair, and yet we have done nothing about.
Let me push you on that. You made national news with your successes, Democratic mayoral primary, but one area where you underperformed.
He is right, though. Property taxes are like a huge problem with how we structure the tax burden of our society, specifically as property taxes relate to school funding. There is a very deep and abiding problem with that, insofar as it means poorer areas have less funding than wealthier areas, and that's really bad, actually.
One was with black voters. Exit polling shows nearly double the number of black voters picked Andrew Cuomo as their first choice, although polling suggests you may have a better showing in the general. Many of these black voters are in neighborhoods like Brownsville and Flatbush, are also worried about affordability, but in different ways. They are worried about maintaining home ownership, judges ruling against them, skyrocketing property taxes, as you said. They're trying to run small businesses. How do you address their skepticism about solutions that you've been offering in the city, that they are seeing gentrifying rapidly around them, and we're losing some of black elected officials because of gentrifying?
You know, as you say, Rev, we are looking at a reverse Great Migration in New York City. We've lost about 200,000 black New Yorkers in the last few decades. And this is a moment where we can actually stand up and ensure that every New Yorker can stay in their homes. Now, at the beginning of the show, you were saying that I came out of nowhere, and that was really the experience.
Zolta, fair question. What does this have to do with Palestine? My understanding is that eventually there is going to be a part in this interview that has to do with Gaza and Palestine, and I'm keeping an eye out and an ear out for that. But I figure the rest of the interview is worth watching in its entirety to make sure we have all the context for what is happening around that. I could find like a clipped section of this, and I did, but then I figured let's watch the entire thing, see what else he talks about. I think that's important too.
Where I was polling at 1% for a lot of this race, and I would go and I would speak to elder black New Yorkers. I spoke with a pastor. I asked him, why did you endorse Andrew Cuomo? He said, Mario was good to me.
Yeah.
He said, I endorsed Mario's son.
People around the country, Mario's Andrew's father, the late governor.
And so that was a name that they were familiar with, and mine was one that they had to learn. Mine was one that they hadn't heard of before. And what I was proud of is by the end of that primary, we won young black voters. We still have work to do with older black voters, and that's the focus of this general election, is making clear that when they're facing 3,500 instances of deed theft since 2015, we're going to create an Office of Deed Theft Prevention to actually ensure that older black New Yorkers are not being exploited simply out of a desire to finalize their will for their children.
I gotta say, like, I think that's good. Actually, like, I like the fact that he is a straight shooter on like some of the weaknesses of his campaign and talks about his plan to address those weaknesses. And also his plan to address those weaknesses includes solutions for known and like quantifiable problems. The fact that there is like a thriving scam artist community preying on these people. Yeah, we should have a government that does something about that intervenes to keep vulnerable people from being scammed. We should, in fact, have an office in the government that deals with like hate crimes. That seems like something we should already have, and I think it kind of baffles some people when Zohran puts these policy proposals out there that like, wait, we don't have that already? Wait, you mean not only is no one doing anything enough about this in government, but you're actually going to take the big step of doing something about it. I think that's important, and I think it speaks to the quality of him as a politician. But that being said, we still haven't gotten to the part where the accusations kick in.
You have the support of many key New York Democrats, including the city controller, Brad Lander, State Attorney General Letitia James, numerous congressional Democrats. but you still have not received endorsement of two of the city's most powerful politicians, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. I know both men. I've worked with them on countless issues over the years. We may not align on every single thing, but I think we all can agree they sincerely care about the future of the party. Can you tell us if you think those endorsements are still to come, or why do you think they've been reluctant to back you up publicly until now?
You know, I have appreciated the conversations I've had with both of them and the ways in which that no matter when we're speaking or where we're speaking, what we're speaking about is affordability and New Yorkers. That's at the center of this. And one thing I've said is, absolutely, I welcome endorsements from anyone in this city and in this state. And yet our focus is on the partnership in governing to ensure we can actually deliver for those New Yorkers. Because what we have seen in the past is too often City Hall has been at war with Albany. And we've seen that especially under Andrew Cuomo's leadership in the state. What New Yorkers want is an understanding that we all have the same constituents. We all have to deliver for them together.
Now, I've down through the years, said and been involved in things that I've later said was misunderstood, and some things that...
And I think that that is a savvy thing to say. I understand some people might read what he said there as capitulation, when in reality, he's coming in as an underdog and he needs people who are willing to come to him with proposals to try and get policies done. And that means there are going to be some compromises that are going to have to be made because he is not coming into this in a position of power. But I think that he is projecting strength, and I think he is, he's got a lot of people rattled right now and willing to come to the table in that way, when they might not otherwise be. Because it's easy to run an idealistic campaign. It's much harder to legislate and, you know, lead as an elected official and maintain that ideological purity. What we need here are realistic and realistic solutions based on like the reality or political reality on the ground. And I think he can navigate that. I think he's demonstrated that he can navigate that. But I don't think that this is a sign of him selling out his morals or principles or really his campaign promises. I'm sure that there are going to be people who are going to come to him to try and get him to do that. But I haven't seen him actually give ground on that, other than to say, you're welcome to make the offer.
I regret it. Mrs. Coretta Scott King told me, you got to watch language, got to watch what you say. Now, let's talk about anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and also, this is exactly why you don't like politicians. Champion policies, not people. And I happen to like Zohran Mamdani as a person, but I like his policies, and my loyalty is to the policies. My desire to see the fulfillment of the policies is and will always be number one, not like the political figure behind them. I think he's cool, but my support for better policies is not dependent on me thinking he's cool. If it comes out tomorrow that he is in fact compromised, like, good riddance. Now we know. But in a race between him and Andrew Cuomo, if he is compromised, I'm going to do everything I can to leverage power of whatever kind I can muster to get those better policies passed. Because we always work within imperfect systems.
New York City is the home of the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. The mayor must build a...
Look, I'm not... Look, you guys are like, he's not compromised. He's not compromised. I don't know that. If something came out tomorrow that none of us saw coming, and it turned out he wasn't really cool and was in fact really awful, that's fine. Like, because my purpose here isn't to like be like, this is the best guy, bow down and worship Zohran Mamdani. He might be awful in ways we can't foresee. He might have weaknesses we can't foresee. But the point is, the policies need to be good.
Relationship. Whoever
policies over people.
The mayor becomes trust in all communities of the city. The term globalize the intifada has become a flashpoint for Jewish New Yorkers who say they're concerned about how your views...
No, don't even worship me. That's weird. You know, like I'm fallible. I'm a person. Like, I cried the other day about pants. Like, do not worship me. For fuck's sake.
The Israeli-Gaza conflict will influence how you govern.
I'm missing
the
it.
term globalized Jewish population outside. Coretta Scott King told me you got to watch language, got to watch what you say. Now, let's talk about anti-Semitism. New York City is the home of the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. The mayor must build a relationship, whoever the mayor becomes, trust in all communities of the city. The term globalize the intifada has become a flashpoint for
Okay, that was funny.
Jewish New Yorkers who say they're concerned about how your views on the Israeli-Gaza conflict will influence how you govern the city. You said on Meet the Press in July, that's not language you would use, but you don't want to police the speech of others. But we both know words matter. The Department of Defense means something different than the Department of War. I've experienced this throughout my own civil rights career, and I've had to correct myself to deal with what people receive may not be what I meant. And words have consequences, and sometimes we need to examine our own positions to build unity. Has your personal views on the phrase of global intifada changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than saying, I'm just not going to police other people's language?
Yes, they have. And you know, when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement, to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints, because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the
Yes, I am aware that globalize the intifada is not anti-Jewish, and I'm pretty sure that Zohran Mamdani is also aware that it is not anti-Jewish. However, the problem we're kind of running into here is that there's a large group of people who do interpret it as anti-Jewish, and that when you're a politician, that kind of matters.
The phrase globalize the INFA to stada has become an inflammatory phrase. Do you disavow hummus? Will you globalize the infant tatas?
Jesus, no. But thank you for the $5 dono. I do think, like, it's fine to, like, I thought his answer back early on in his campaign was totally fine, that he's not willing to police other people's language. But I do think that the idea that, like, people are attacking him for a phrase he didn't even say, he just said he wouldn't police other people's speech on it. I think it's a nothing burger. Like, it is not, it's a, let me put it this way, it's a virtue signal. It is not related to policy, as far as I'm concerned. And I think he's trying to thread that needle. Let's see.
8.5 million people that call this city home. And in the meetings that I have had since that moment, I've met with Jewish elected officials, with rabbis, with community leaders, and there was one rabbi that spoke to me about how that phrase, for her, brought back memories of bus bombings in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me that she had a fear, as she said, that could come home to New York City. And so in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I have heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact it was having in that same conversation I was having with that rabbi. And so I have said, after having that conversation, that this is language I would discourage.
Okay. So now, having seen this part, wait a minute. Let me get this clear. What he's saying here is just that, he talked with someone and he realized that language doesn't get through to certain people. So he's saying, yeah, I would want people who are trying to push for an end to occupation to use language that is more effective. I genuinely, I can't see anything wrong with this. Genuinely, like, what, I don't understand the issue. Yeah, you should use the most effective language possible to get other people to adhere, like adopt your political positions. Like, I don't think that is a controversial thing for me to say. You use good rhetoric to get people to your position. Our opposition doesn't do that. They win elections. No, but our opposition does do that. Our opposition does radicalize people, does use language that goes beyond and is effective at communicating to the people that they are looking to radicalize to their positions. They actually are really, really good at it. Conservatives are really good at radicalizing people to their positions. When you look at like fear-mongering around like immigration, like in the lead up to the 2020 or the 2016 election, and all the constant coverage about caravans and whatnot, or like the lead up to the 2024 election and like the fear-mongering around fentanyl, like it's actually incredibly effective at how they radicalized people, not just their base, but people outside of their base. And that's because they're willing to adopt language that resonates with those people, you know? And what I think is a good thing to do, especially if you are more serious about running a campaign, is to adopt language that is more effective at radicalizing people to your positions. And we on the left need to get better at it. We need to get better at adopting language that gets more people on board with freeing Palestine. Like, I don't think that's a controversial thing to do or say, right? Like, I feel like if you disagree with that fundamental premise, you are more interested in like virtue signaling to some group online rather than actually achieving your stated goal, right? Like, you gotta be serious about winning people over if you want to actually affect change. And so I think it's reasonable for him to share a story about like talking with someone who's in the city he's running to be mayor of, and having it explained to him that like this is not effective rhetoric, and realizing that the issue that language is meant to address and get people to radicalize towards isn't effective when it is, in the minds of certain people, completely disconnected. Like the cause of like the end of Gaza occupation, freedom and equality for Palestinians, when this is disconnected because of the words you choose better words. This is not a capitulation. It's a recognition. And I think that that's fair, because I think there's a difference between being an average person in the world or online, on the internet, etc., and being someone who is running for office. I think there's a difference in how you need to comport yourself. And I think that this bodes well, because to me, this communicates that he is serious about getting people on board with the project to end the occupation, right? Like the project to either to get like an end to this genocide. Yeah, exactly, Forlorn 79. Globalize the Intifada works as a political strategy, but most people have no idea what the Intifada means. We should use slogans people understand so they can't be made to misunderstood them by our enemies. Exactly. If there is a misunderstanding from a political figure to a constituent, that misunderstanding needs to be addressed by the person running for office via their rhetoric. The goal is to have rhetoric that reaches as many people as possible and that radicalizes people to their position well enough to vote for them. You know, like that's the name of that's the name of the game in politics. And I just don't see this as a betrayal of pro-Palestine ideals.
Now, you've been running on the platform of affordability fixes for New Yorkers, like a rent freeze you mentioned, free buses, city-owned groceries that made you popular with some working New Yorkers, but not so popular with real estate developers and the financial class. You were the only mayoral candidate to march alongside Martin Luther King III and I on our march on Wall Street about DEI on last week, as we call for economic justice for all New Yorkers and all Americans. But right now, the top 1% earners in the city pay 40% of the city's income taxes, according to the Empire Center for Public Policy.
Let's make that 80%. Let's go.
How do you bring these wealthy residents to the table as mayor?
You tell them to go fuck themselves. I kid. That would be an example of very ineffective rhetoric.
Stop them from saying they're leaving, going to Florida. because we need that tax revenue to pay for some of the things you're talking about. How do you pay for it if they're gone?
Well, the first thing I have to say is I was proud to be the only candidate for mayor at that march. And I was proud because some of the chants at that march, they were asking, is the dream alive?
Right.
Is Dr. King's dream still alive? And he asked the question decades ago, what good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?
Right.
That's a question that New Yorkers are still wrestling with today in 2025. And so what I have put forward is a vision to make the most expensive city in the United States of America affordable. At a time when we have the wealthiest city, it is also one where 1 in 4 are living in poverty. And to your point, we have a number of New Yorkers who are doing quite well. The top 1% of New York City earns $1 million or more a year. And my vision is not one where they leave, it is one where they stay. It is
How do you get them to stay?
In part by showing them that asking them to pay more in taxes would increase even their quality of life. Because when you ask New Yorkers what...
This is such a good line of attack, right? Like, yes, you need to make people understand what they are getting for their taxes. And if millionaires understand that when they pay taxes, like a good portion of their taxes, like, oh, wait, the homeless actually have homes? The buses and the trains run on time and like are nicer than ever? Like that makes a difference. It genuinely makes a difference.
What is it that is making them feel uneasy in this city? You often hear from them about the cleanliness of our city, the safety of our city, the affordability of our city.
Like, I don't know, like make like a government department that pays people livable wages in order to like go around and clean up the city. Like have like a beautification like squad. You know, like you show like almost ostentatiously, like you put a spotlight on like, hey, we're giving people jobs and they're going to go around and they are going to clean up the trash in your neighborhoods. They are going to make this city spotless. Like, do you know how many rich people would look at that and be like, finally, something for my taxes? And it would be disconnected almost entirely from like the material benefits to the vast majority of the city. But that one thing, yeah, the National Guard, they call them, exactly, WJ Adam.
We are not asking to raise these taxes for the sake of it. We're asking so that we can actually make the slowest buses in the country fast and free, so that we can actually create a department of community safety that would deploy dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the top 100 stations of the highest levels of mental health crises and homelessness. That relationship proving that tax dollar leads to that investment, because we know that it's not just a fiscal policy that takes somebody from New York City to somewhere else. Because a lot of New Yorkers, if they leave, they go to California, another high tax state. They go to New Jersey, another high tax state. Many people say they might go to Florida, but I have seen and heard from many New Yorkers concern about this new elimination of vaccine mandates in Florida that makes them question whether they would ever want to live there.
Yeah. So you would raise the taxes, but you are telling them why. Raise the taxes for the rich.
For the top 1%, we'd raise their personal income tax by 2%. So that would be, if you make $1 million a year, $20,000 extra in taxes. And the point and my responsibility would be to deliver on that, to show them that it is a worthwhile investment.
We've heard rumblings in the recent few days that President Trump is looking for ways to entice Mayor Eric Adams to drop his independent campaign. Trump may be inspired by Democratic polling suggesting Andrew Cuomo could have a path to victory, but only if other candidates besides you and him drop out, including Curtis Sliwa. Are you concerned about a head-to-head matchup?
Wait a minute, if Curtis Sliwa drops out, who's going to be fighting against the Ratmen? The Ratmen under the city. They've grown fat off of our pizzas and our slices. They're getting too powerful to head off down there. We've already collapsed several of the auxiliary tunnels. If we have to collapse many more, they'll overrun the surface world.
With the former governor, who we are inviting to join the show next weekend. Who are you concerned about that? I had a breakfast with him Friday. We talked about issues where we agree, disagree. You and I talked very candidly about things. How concerned are you, two-part, about a Cuomo race singularly, and how concerned are you that the president is seeming to be involved in discussion?
Millionaires don't use buses and trains, though. I think, in a recent appearance, it might have been the town hall he did with Bernie Sanders, I'm not sure. I think it was that. But someone asked about public transit and the rich, and he had an answer that was something along the lines of, make the public transit so good that even the millionaires want to use it. And I think that is honestly, that's a great solution. That is a great solution to the problem, right? Like, just make trains cool looking again, you know? Actually make them, like, clean. Actually make them, like, even more efficient. And, like, I think a lot of millionaires would. I think that it is possible, in fact, to make public transit that is so fucking good that even the wealthy use it. You know, like, I think a good model to take a look at would be, like, Japan, and Japan's, like, rail culture, where, like, it is considered awesome to travel by train. They got fucking trains that levitate. Okay? That's just cool. Like, make our public transit cool, make it efficient, make it affordable and or free, and I think that the rich will also use it.
About your race.
I am not concerned about a head-to-head matchup with Andrew Cuomo. You know, for months in the primary, he said his dream opponent was me, and then we defeated him by 13 points with the most votes any primary winner has ever received in the history of this city. We will do the same thing again in November. What I am concerned about, however, is Donald Trump's interference with this race. We are seeing a president who wants to rob New Yorkers of the right to pick their own leaders. And what we are seeing amidst all of this is an acceptance of this fact, when we know, Rev, that acceptance is the antidote to justice. You have to actually be willing to name oppression for what it is, to name authoritarianism for what it is, and then fight back against it. And what we see in Donald Trump is he is using every single tool at his disposal to try and stop my candidacy. And he's doing that because he knows that I will actually deliver on what he campaigned on, a more affordable life for New Yorkers.
In one of your visits to...
I genuinely don't know what happened to Al Sharpton, Paladin Lost. It is a bit befuddling.
National Action Network House of Justice, you gave credit to a lot of civil rights leaders for making it possible for you to run. How important is it for us to protect voting rights around the country? And how important is it to you for people out of that tradition that had to fight understand your candidacy?
It is incredibly important, because we know that it's the bedrock for so many freedoms. And yet what we are seeing is that it is under attack. And it is not incidentally under attack. It is intentionally and systematically under attack. Because we see an administration that has no regard, not only for the history of this country, the struggles of the people of this country, but also the promise of liberation and liberty in this country. And so I am committed to continuing the legacy that we have seen before us, because it's
also, if you didn't understand, like, what happened to Al Sharpton, like, dude looks very different than he used to. Like, he looks very, very different than he used to. That's why people are saying that.
Tempting in this language of politics to think of yourself as a first this or a first that. We are but one of many who are following in the footsteps of what has been laid out before us for decades. And I would say that, Rev, you have been helping to lead that same charge.
Thank you for that, and we'll leave it right there. I'm sure we'll be seeing you many more times. Many thanks to New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, who has come in studio, not only come on the show, but come in studio.
I don't know what he did. It might have been gastric bypass or Ozempic. I don't know. Probably not Ozempic, probably a gastric bypass. I think he lost weight before, like, Ozempic was on the market. Whatever. I don't care.
Studio.
But, like, okay, so overall, guys, I gotta say, I think Zohran beat the allegations. I don't think arguing for better rhetoric to get more people to agree with you is ever a bad thing for a political figure to say they now support. Like, I actually want my political figures capable of getting more people to support them. I think that that's good. I think that that is a necessary skill for people to have, especially if they are going to be political figures. So, that being said, you know, like, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Do the things. And also, like, just deploy some critical thinking about what you actually want from your, like, political leadership? Do you want political leadership that like agrees with you on everything but alienates possible allies and ultimately like fails to build real power? I don't want that. I don't want that. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, dating, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack